My older brother Marcus measures success in stock tickers and the square footage of his downtown penthouse. I measure it in the tight swirling grain of black walnut and the perfect seamless fit of a dovetail joint. He lives and breathes in a world of gleaming glass towers, seven-figure bonuses, and conversations about market volatility that sound to me like a foreign language. My world smells of sawdust wood varnish and the deep, satisfying peace of creating something real and tangible with my own two hands. To me, that is a language I understand completely. To my family, it has always been a source of quiet, polite disappointment. From the moment we were old enough to have ambitions, Marcus and I were set on different trajectories. He was the golden child, the one destined for an Ivy League school and a corner office. He collected accolades, debate team trophies, honor roll certificates, scholarships with an effortless grace. I collected scraps of interesting wood and old worn-out tools. While he was studying for his SATs, I was learning how to read the soul of a piece of timber, to see the table or the chair hidden within the raw material. To my parents, Marcus was not just a son. He was a success story, a walking, talking return on their investment. My chosen profession, custom carpentry, was viewed differently. It was a quaint hobby, a respectable trade for someone else's son perhaps, but a disappointment for their own. I remember the moment this difference was carved into my memory, as sharply as one of my own chisels. I was 16 and had just spent 2 months painstakingly crafting an intricate chessboard out of bird's eye maple and rosewood. It was the most complex thing I had ever made, and I was immensely proud of it. The same afternoon I finished it, Marcus came home with his final report card of the year, straight A's, with a glowing letter of recommendation from his calculus teacher, already secured for his college applications. That evening my father called us into the living room. He held Marcus's report card in one hand, beaming. "This, son," he announced, clapping Marcus on the back. "This is a ticket to anywhere you want to go in life. We're so proud of you." My mother was already talking about getting it professionally framed. Then my father turned to me. "What's that you've got there, Leo?" I brought the chessboard forward, my heart pounding with a nervous hope. He took it, glanced at it for a moment, and set it down on the coffee table. "Oh, that's very nice, Leo," he said, his attention already drifting back to Marcus. "It's good to have a hobby to keep you busy. Just make sure it doesn't distract you from your real studies, all right?" That was the moment I understood. In their eyes, his piece of paper covered in letters and numbers was real. It was valuable. It was the future. My creation, a thing of beauty and skill that I had poured my soul into, was just a distraction. That dynamic never changed. It only widened as we grew older. He climbed the corporate ladder, and I honed my craft. He lived in the sun, and I learned to find satisfaction in the shade. But every now and then, he would make a point of reminding me just how long and dark his shadow could be. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, not as a text or a casual phone call, but as a thick cream-colored card delivered by a courier. The lettering was embossed in gold, the language formal and distant. It announced a housewarming gala to celebrate my brother Marcus's acquisition of a new penthouse apartment in the city's most aggressively modern high-rise. I read it standing in my workshop, a fine layer of cedar dust, settling on the expensive cardstock. My first feeling wasn't pride or excitement for my brother. It was a slow, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. I knew what these events were. I had been to enough of them over the years to understand their true purpose. They were never about family. They were about performance. They were meticulously staged productions designed to showcase Marcus's success, and I was always an unwilling actor in the play. My role was to be the quaint blue-collar brother, the living, breathing before picture to his glorious after. My presence served as a dark homespun backdrop against which his own brilliance could shine even brighter. I was the cautionary tale that made his success story all the more compelling. I showed the invitation to my girlfriend Anna that evening. She ran her fingers over the embossed logo. "Wow, this is fancy," she said, then looked at me. "Are you going to go?" I sighed, collapsing onto our comfortable non-designer couch. "I don't know, Anna. You know how these things are. It'll be 6 hours of me trying to explain what hand-cut joinery is to people who only understand stock options, while my parents look at me with that same sad what-went-wrong expression they've perfected over the years." I shook my head. "It's just exhausting." "Then don't go," she said simply. "It's not that easy," I replied. If I don't go, I'm ungrateful and not supportive. If I do go, I'm the family footnote. There's no winning. I crumpled a throw pillow in my hands. And this one is different. He called me yesterday, which he never does. It's not even really a housewarming. He's trying to land a new client, some legendary investor named Alistair Finch. The whole party is basically a stage set to impress this one guy. Marcus wants the whole happy, successful family there as props. Anna was silent for a moment, processing this. So he doesn't want his brother there? He wants a prop that looks like his brother. The way she put it was so blunt, so true, that it almost made me laugh. Exactly, I said. Or, she said, a thoughtful look on her face. Maybe you go and you don't play the role. You just go as you. You're a successful small business owner, Leo. You're proud of what you do. You build beautiful things that last. Don't let them make you feel small just because your work doesn't happen on the 50th floor. Her words were meant to be encouraging a call to arms for my own self-worth. But as I looked at the golden invitation sitting on my simple handmade coffee table, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. In Marcus's world, a man's worth wasn't measured in what he could build, but in what he could buy. And by that metric, I would always come up short. Anna's words stuck with me long after she said them. Don't let them make you feel small. For years I had walked into my family's gatherings with a preemptive sense of defeat, bracing myself for the subtle jabs and pitying looks. I had been playing a role they had assigned me without ever questioning the script. That night, something shifted. Anna was right. I wasn't a failure. I was a craftsman. I ran my own business. I had happy clients, and I created things of beauty and function from nothing but raw material and my own 2 hands. I decided I would go to Marcus's party, but I wouldn't go as his charity case brother. I would go as myself. The decision created an immediate practical problem what to wear. My closet consisted of work flannels, sturdy denim, and one slightly too tight good suit I'd bought for a wedding 5 years ago. It was a uniform for a life of sawdust and client meetings in workshops, not for a gala in a penthouse overlooking the city. The thought of trying to compete with Marcus's world of tailored Italian suits and designer watches was laughable. So I decided not to. I wouldn't try to wear their costume. I went to a small local tailor and had a simple dark wool blazer fitted perfectly to my frame, which I paired with a crisp white shirt and dark trousers. It wasn't flashy, but it was well made, honest, and it felt like me. The next question was the gift. A bottle of expensive whiskey felt like a weak attempt to play Marcus's game. A gift card felt insulting. I decided to give him the only thing I could that was truly valuable, a piece of my time, a piece of my craft. For the next 2 weeks, I spent every evening after work in my shop, not on a client commission, but on a small intricate box for my brother. I chose a piece of burled walnut I had been saving for years, a rare cut with a grain so complex it looked like a storm cloud captured in wood. The project became a kind of meditation. The world of Marcus of stock prices and acquisitions faded away, replaced by the scent of the wood, the clean scrape of my hand plane, and the precise work of my hands. I decided on hand-cut dovetail joints, a technique that is notoriously difficult and time-consuming, a quiet testament to skill that only a knowing eye would truly appreciate. Night after night, I worked. I planed the wood to a glassy smoothness. I cut the joints with a Japanese saw. My breath held steady with each pull. I watched the pins and tails come together so perfectly they seemed to fuse into one another. I spent hours sanding, moving through finer and finer grits of sandpaper, until the wood felt like silk beneath my fingertips. I didn't use a thick plastic-y varnish. Instead, I applied multiple coats of pure tung oil, rubbing it into the grain by hand, a slow process that brought out the wood's deep, rich, 3-dimensional character. The finished box was small, no bigger than a book. It had no flashy hardware or ornamentation. Its beauty was in its perfect proportions, the impossible tightness of its joints, and the mesmerizing depth of the grain. The lid was fitted so precisely that when you closed it, it made a soft, satisfying whoosh as the air was pushed out. It was in its own quiet way the most perfect thing I had ever made. The night of the party, I wrapped the box carefully in simple brown paper and tied it with twine. Holding it in my hands, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't expected. I wasn't going to the party as the lesser brother anymore. I was going as an artist, a creator. This small box was my ambassador. It represented my world, my skills and my definition of value. Let Marcus have his penthouse and his stock portfolio. This was what I could do, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like more than enough. The elevator to Marcus's penthouse was a silent mirror-paneled box that ascended so quickly my ears popped. When the doors opened, it felt like stepping into another world. The apartment was a cavern of glass and white marble with floor-to-ceiling windows that displayed the glittering city skyline like a piece of expensive living art. The air hummed with the low murmur of powerful people, making powerful conversation, punctuated by the clinking of champagne glasses. I stood at the entrance for a moment, clutching my plainly wrapped gift, feeling like a man who had accidentally wandered onto a movie set. Marcus, looking like he had been born in his impeccably tailored suit, spotted me and glided through the crowd. "Leo, glad you could make it," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder in a gesture that looked brotherly but felt like a proprietary claim. "Surprised you got away from the sawdust for a night." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Happy housewarming, Marcus," I said, handing him the gift. He took the small brown paper-wrapped package, his eyebrows raising slightly at its lack of ostentation. "Thanks, little brother," he said, giving it a perfunctory shake. He unwrapped a corner, glanced at the dark burled wood for a fraction of a second, and offered a tight, dismissive smile. "Oh, neat." Without another word, he turned and placed my gift on a crowded side table, nestled between a magnum of champagne and a gaudy crystal decanter someone else had brought. My heart sank as I watched him turn away the box I had poured my soul into for 2 weeks already forgotten. I found my parents near the massive windows, holding drinks and looking slightly overwhelmed but deeply proud. "Leo," dear, my mother said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You look, well, that's a nice blazer." The unsaid part hung in the air. "It's not an Armani suit like your brother's." "Still making those tables, are you?" My father asked already, looking over my shoulder for someone more important to talk to. "Good, good. Did you see the view from this balcony? Marcus says he can see the harbor on a clear day." They were proud of the apartment, of the success it represented. I was just a part of the scenery. For the next hour, I drifted through the party like a ghost. I tried to make small talk, but the conversations were about topics I had no entry point into mergers with firms in Singapore. Summers in the Hamptons, the pros and cons of different luxury electric vehicles. I felt like an anthropologist studying a foreign tribe. At one point, standing near the bar, I overheard 2 men in expensive watches, looking in my direction. "Who's that guy?" one asked quietly. The other took a sip of his scotch. "That's Marcus's brother," he replied, his tone a mix of gossip and discovery. "The one who's a carpenter, I think." The word hung in the air, a label that defined me and separated me from everyone else in the room. I retreated to a corner, accepting a glass of water from a passing server, and watched the party unfold. I could see my small handmade box, sitting on the side table, an island of quiet, organic beauty, in a sea of glittering, mass-produced luxury. It looked as out of place as I felt. It was a piece of my world, a piece of my soul, and in this place it was invisible, its value completely unrecognized. I took a slow sip of my water and braced myself. I knew with a familiar, weary certainty that the night was far from over. After another hour of mingling, the ambient music softened, and Marcus tapped a fork against his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. He moved to the center of the room, a natural spotlight seeming to follow him. He looked every bit the master of this universe he had built for himself. "Friends, colleagues," he began, his voice smooth and confident. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my humble new home." A wave of polite, appreciative laughter rippled through the crowd. He let it subside before continuing. "When I look out at this view, I don't just see a city. I see a landscape of opportunities, of challenges to be met and conquered. Success, as everyone in this room knows, isn't about luck. It's about relentless ambition. It's about vision. It's about never ever settling for good enough." He spoke for several minutes about his philosophy, weaving in anecdotes about deals he had closed and competitors he had outmaneuvered. It was a masterful performance designed to reinforce his image as a titan of industry. I stood near the back, watching him, feeling the familiar mix of resentment and forced familial pride. Then he paused, taking a slow sip of his champagne. He scanned the room and his eyes landed directly on me. A small, knowing smirk played on his lips. "Of course," he said, his voice taking on a new, more intimate tone, as if he were sharing a little family secret with his 100 closest friends. Not everyone is cut out for this kind of pressure. We all find our own level in life. We all take different paths. He raised his glass, gesturing almost imperceptibly in my direction. The crowd followed his gaze, and suddenly I felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning toward me. Take my little brother Leo, for example, Marcus said. The spotlight was now on me, hot and unwelcome. He's here tonight. While I chose the path of global finance, of building capital and creating wealth, Leo... He paused for dramatic effect. Well, he's great with his hands. A few nervous titters broke the silence. Marcus, sensing he had the audience, leaned into the microphone with a conspiratorial grin. But hey, he said, his voice booming slightly. I guess every family needs someone to fix the furniture, right? The room erupted. It wasn't a roar of laughter, but a wave of it. Some of it sharp and genuine from his sycophantic colleagues, some of it awkward and uncomfortable from those with a better sense of decency. To me, it all sounded the same. The heat rushed to my face, a burning tide of shame. The glittering city lights outside the window seemed to blur and tilt. In that moment, I was 16 again, standing in the living room with my chessboard, listening to my work being called a hobby. The only difference was that now the humiliation was public. It was the punchline to my brother's joke. I was the punchline. I stood frozen, my drink forgotten in my hand, as Marcus, a triumphant look on his face, raised his glass again. To ambition, he declared. To ambition, the room echoed back. The formal speech was over. The conversation started up again, the moment already fading for everyone except me. I felt the pitying glances, the quick, curious looks. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to run out of that apartment and never look back. But I was pinned in place by a lifetime of this, a sudden crushing weight of every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every single time I had been made to feel that my life, my work, and my passion were somehow less than his. My brother had put me in my place, and his entire world had laughed along with him. I stood there immobilized by a shame so hot it felt like a fever as the room slowly resumed its casual chatter. The moment of my humiliation was already fading for everyone else, a fleeting bit of party drama. But for me, it was a brand on my skin. I saw my mother avoid my gaze and my father give Marcus a proud, approving nod. Anna moved to my side, her hand a warm, steady presence on my back. "We can go," she whispered, her voice tight with anger on my behalf. "No," I whispered back, surprising myself with the steel in my own voice. "I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me run." I took a shaky breath and straightened my shoulders, determined to endure the rest of the night with my head held high, even if it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was then that I noticed a subtle movement near the front of the room. An older, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet authority had detached himself from the main group. He wasn't looking at me or at Marcus. He was walking slowly toward the side table, where my forgotten gift sat among its gaudy, expensive brethren. It was Alistair Finch, the legendary investor Marcus was so desperate to impress. He bypassed the magnum of champagne and the crystal decanter without a glance. His eyes, sharp and discerning, landed on my small wooden box. He picked it up, not casually, but with a gentleness that suggested he was handling something of immense value. He turned it over in his hands, his thumb tracing the lines of the dovetail joints I had so painstakingly cut. He opened it, and I saw him lean in slightly, as if listening to the soft whoosh of air as the lid settled back into place. Marcus, finally noticing where his prized guest's attention had landed, hurried over his face, plastered with a host's eager smile. "Alistair, so glad you're enjoying the party. Can I get you another drink? That's just a little something my brother brought." Mr. Finch didn't seem to hear him. He looked up from the box, his gaze scanning the room until it found me. Then, holding the box, like a rare artifact, he walked directly toward me. Marcus followed a confused and slightly irritated look, now replacing his smile. Mr. Finch stopped in front of me, his eyes ignoring my brother completely. "Did you make this?" he asked, his voice not loud, but carrying a weight that made the people closest to us fall silent. I was so stunned I could only nod. "Yes, sir, I did." A genuine smile spread across Mr. Finch's face. "I thought so," he said. He held it up for a better look. "This is black walnut, isn't it? A magnificent piece of burled grain. And these dovetails, they're flawless. This is the work of a master, not a hobbyist. The word master hung in the air. Marcus's face went pale. Mr. Finch then turned to my brother, his smile fading slightly. "You know Marcus," he said, his voice still perfectly audible to the growing circle of onlookers I spend my days in a world of abstract value numbers on a screen market projections. It's easy to forget what real tangible value is. He held up the box. "This has real value. This is skill. This is patience. This is artistry. This is something you can't learn at Harvard Business School." The jab was so precise, so devastating, it took my breath away. The same people who had laughed at Marcus's joke were now staring at him, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. Mr. Finch turned his back on my brother and faced me again. "I've been looking for a true craftsman to build the library for my new estate in the country," he said. "I've interviewed a dozen high-profile designers, and none of them have impressed me. Their work has no soul. But this," he gestured with the box, "this little box tells me everything I need to know about your standards. I would consider it an honor, Mr. Thompson, if you would take on the commission." The summons came on a Wednesday. My phone buzzed with Chloe's name, and my stomach immediately tightened. My sister never called just to chat. A call from Chloe was always a prelude to a demand, a brag, or a combination of the both. I let it ring twice before answering, bracing myself. "Maya, thank God you picked up," she said, her voice a whirlwind of stressed importance. "I'm in the middle of a full-blown crisis, and I need you to listen carefully." Her crisis was, of course, a party. But it wasn't just any party. It was an intimate, high-stakes dinner party she was hosting at her new, obscenely expensive home. She had spent weeks planning every detail, from the Michelin-starred chef she'd hired to the specific vintage of wine she was having flown in. The entire event was a meticulously crafted stage for one person. "Damien Vance is coming," she whispered, her voice a mix of reverence and terror. "The Damien Vance. He's looking for a new estate on the lake, and I am this close," she said, and I could practically hear her pinching her fingers together to landing the biggest commission of my entire life. Everything has to be perfect. I knew the name, of course. In my world, the world of tech and game development, Damien Vance was a legend, a reclusive billionaire who had built his empire from the ground up. In Chloe's world, he was a walking, talking commission check, the ultimate prize. "Okay, Chloe, that's great. What does that have to do with me?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She sighed, a sound heavy with manufactured patience. "Anyway, Mom and Dad are coming, and they insist you be there. You know the whole happy, supportive family image. It's important for appearances." There it was. Not an invitation, but an assignment. I wasn't being asked to come as a sister. I was being summoned as a set piece, a slightly embarrassing piece of furniture they needed in the room to complete the picture. So she continued, her voice shifting into full-on directive mode. "I need you to come. And please, Maya, for the love of God, please, wear something decent. That black dress you have, maybe. Not one of your weird video game t-shirts. And when Mr. Vance or any of his people ask you what you do, just say you're a freelance digital artist or something vague and respectable. Don't talk about elves or dragons or whatever it is you do all day. Just smile, try to act normal, and let me handle the important conversations. Can you do that for me?" I was silent for a long moment, the casual cruelty of her words stinging more than usual. Act normal. As if my entire life, the world I had built from scratch, was something abnormal, something to be hidden away in shame. "I'll check my schedule, Chloe," I said, my voice flat. "Check your schedule," she scoffed. "Maya, what could you possibly have going on? Just be there. 7 p.m. Saturday. And don't be late." She hung up before I could reply. I sat there staring at my two monitors, where the vibrant, breathing world of Ethelgard was running. A world I commanded. A world where I was a creator, a leader, an architect. But on Saturday, I would have to put on a costume and play the role they had written for me. The quiet, unsuccessful little sister with the silly, embarrassing hobby.